In the following presentation, I will be discussing rape and sexual violence as a war crime and how it relates to the Russia and Ukraine conflict. To start us out, I'll be giving a brief history of using rape as a war weapon. Wartime rape has never been limited to a certain era or a particular part of the world. It goes way back, like thousands of years. For example, pictured below is an 8th century piece of artwork that presents Romans killing and raping the Sabine people during the founding of Rome. This puts into perspective just how long rape has been around for. Another important rape incident was when Peter van Hagenbeck raped and murdered people on his own land in 1474. This was the earliest war crime tribunal that, despite anarchy, punished a war criminal. Another important instance was World War II. That was a hot spot for rape. There was so much going on, which I'll discuss later, but was ultimately why the Geneva Conventions were formed. But anyways, we're going to talk about Japan. The Japanese set up comfort stations, basically forcing women into forced prostitution and rape, and would beat them to death. Another notable instance was the Bosnian Yugoslav War in the 1990s, which used rape as ethnic cleansing. These rapes estimated between 12,000 to 50,000 women and girls. This was what led the United Nations to officially deeming it a war crime in 2008. Lastly, the Rwandan War also brought rape to the UN's attention when the women were forcibly impregnated by enemy soldiers and were also raped by HIV-infected men. All these examples are just showing how rape has been around. It's everywhere, and it has been around for thousands of years, so I'm just putting it into perspective. And like I stated previously, rape was not officially deemed a war crime until 2008. It has always been illegal, but just recently has it been being enforced. Let's continue with some definitions. A war crime is a serious violation of the laws of war that result in individual responsibility for those violations. Rape can be defined as an unlawful sexual activity carried out forcibly or under threat of injury against a person's will. Rape as a weapon of war is a tool used to humiliate, destroy, and take power over women, men, and children. Some treaties involved that control and prohibit rape and war are Article 27 of the 4th Geneva Convention, and then its 2 protocols, and then the Rome Statute ICC. So the Geneva Conventions relate to the protection of civilian persons in time of war. It states women shall be especially protected against any attack on their honor, in particular against rape, enforced prostitution, and any form of indecent act. Article 27, Protocol 1 relates to the protection of victims of international armed conflicts, prohibits outrages upon personal dignity, humiliating and degrading treatment, enforced prostitution, and any form of indecent assault. Then Article 4, Protocol 2 is just a summary of those two. And the Rome Statute ICC was the first international criminal law instrument that recognizes forms of sexual violence such as rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, and forced sterilization as distinct war crimes. So the Geneva Conventions was formed and its protocols were enacted because of the horrors of World War II. So they kind of looked back and they were like, we should probably do something about that because that wasn't right, especially with what was going on with Japan and then other examples. Then the Rome Statute ICC was created to prosecute the most serious crimes of international concern and end impunity. And then, like I said earlier, it was the first international instrument that recognized rape and sexual slavery and violence. Now let's discuss how this information relates to Russia and Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine have been at war since February 24th, 2022. Did Russia and Ukraine sign those treaties? Neither Russia or Ukraine are members in the Rome Statute ICC. Ukraine signed it but didn't ratify it, and Russia signed it but withdrew in 2019. Now, as for the Geneva Conventions, both Russia and Ukraine are a part of that treaty. As mentioned on my previous slide, the Geneva Convention states that there shall be no attacks on women that threaten their honor, such as rape or sexual violence. Russia has violated that treaty. Pramila Patten, the Special Representative of the UN Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict, said there are indications that sexual violence is being used as a weapon of war. She cites accounts from circumstances involving rape in front of a family member's, gang rape, and forced nudity. Thomas Reuters, the writer of this article posted by CBC, states he interviewed more than 20 people who worked with alleged victims. He mentioned a doctor, a couple lawyers, and the victims right there. And they shared accounts of alleged sexual violence by Russian armed forces that occurred in various parts of Ukraine. Similar to my previous example, many allegations included allegations of family members being forced to watch, or multiple soldiers participating, or acts conducted at gunpoint. Now let's talk about some problems with enforcing regulations and prohibitions against rape. To begin, many don't report it. It's hard to investigate because often the women or men in some instances don't report it. The enemy finished their goal of breaking their spirit, breaking their will to live, and they are too traumatized to even speak about it. Or they fear that their report will go unnoticed or unheard. Many times it is swept under the rug. That fear that I mentioned above is very accurate because oftentimes rape is dismissed by military leaders and others. Rape and acts of sexual violence went unrecognized and unchallenged. Some soldiers, perpetrators, and world leaders used to view rape, and still do, as a benefit of war. Rape is oftentimes difficult to prove. Going along with the first bullet point, rape is difficult to prove because many don't report it, and oftentimes the perpetrator will kill their victims in order to hide the evidence. Rape is seen as reckless behavior. Many have dismissed incidences of rape, claiming boys get out of hand or out of control after a rough day on the battlefield. The world ignored that rape was not a simple act of recklessness, but an act of torture. Rape as a war crime does still occur today, as seen in the Russian and Ukraine war/conflict, but the world is in a better place now to investigate, document, and prosecute it.